Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 303 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is CompTIA's Chief Technology Evangelist. He has consulted in cloud security, open source, and networking for organizations such as Northrop Grumman, Tesco, AWS, Westpoint, SoftBank, and Symantec. He has also developed education programs on a myriad of subjects, including security analytics, cloud administration, Linux, British Romantic literature, and kayaking. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast, James Stanger.
Well, thanks, Phil. How you doing?
I'm good, yes, and it's great to have you on the show as well. Yeah. So obviously that's very much a bit of an overview of your career history, but maybe you could give us a bit of an insight into your role with CompTIA and what you're currently doing.
Well, thanks, Ben. I work as CompTIA's Chief Technology Evangelist. What kind of a whiz-bang title, isn't it? And what I do is I go out and talk to IT professionals, hiring managers, folks around the world. And the other thing that I do is I basically work a lot with technology, explaining how it works. So at CompTIA, we do many things from research to advocacy around the world about IT professionals. We're a membership organization, and the IT industry has basically told us to fill the skills gap. We create certifications and training and all sorts of learning, and I'm responsible for helping out with that learning. So, for example, if folks want to learn about security and Security Plus, I create videos and things to help understand the concepts. So there's a lot of outreach and liaison work I do with the industry. I work with other certification entities. I lead a group called the C3, and I do a lot of work in advisory councils for various universities and corporations.
Right. I want to ask you specifically about the certification side. So in terms of recognition of certification, that's always an interesting one for me. So how does that work in terms of, what the validity of a certification that presumably the CompTIA provide, for example? How is that how does it work in terms of industry recognition?
There are a couple of things that the way it works is that what's nice about it is that many, many years ago and continuing to the present day, we basically have corporations coming to us and asking for it. So this is an industry-driven thing. When I say corporations, right, I don't just mean companies like, say, Tesco or what have you, but governments, et cetera. Nonprofits, all sorts, a lot of managed service providers, and they all realize they need a talented workforce. And so they come to us. So it's a demand-driven business that way. We also make sure that we follow and even set industry-defining procedures. And by industry-defining, I mean in certification. There's the ISO 17024 standard that we follow, but also every year as we go out and reach out to the industry and talk to people. The people who develop our exams, our learning, are in constant demand. People are always asking us, what we're hearing and what we're doing. When I say people, I mean educators around the world, certification bodies, et cetera. So we fill industry demand and what folks ask for, first of all, but also we've done a lot in leading the industry in defining what certification is in the first place and what those standards are.
Right. And presumably because organizations are in contact with you about demand, presumably, which are the skill sets and which are the certifications that are probably most valuable in the job market right now?
That's right. What's so great about it is that we listen to thousands of subject matter experts, working IT pros in the field. They're hiring managers. It's a fantastic process. I always call it kind of crowdsourcing on steroids, isn't that we distill that information into our objectives. We have job task analysis that we do. And all of that sounds, a little academic or whatever, but it really is very practical. And so those objectives, whether it be for A plus or security plus network, all those, fun pluses that we have, it's the distilled wisdom of literally thousands of people who've actively contributed. It's a pretty cool process.
Right. Okay. So if I was going to put you on the spot and say maybe what are the top 3 hot ticket skill sets at the moment, what would you say they are?
One of them, I would say cloud security, moving into that and understanding what it means to do hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, et cetera. I'd say that's a major skill set, because it's not like everything is going to always be in the cloud. There's going to be plenty of on-premise. There's going to be plenty of data center. But I think the foundation for, technology moving forward as a kind of first choice, not the only choice, but a first choice, is going to be cloud. I would say it's one of the first skills. I would say the second is I always jump right into security. I probably should have even listed security first. Not only is it an interest of mine, but it's something that clearly is top of mind and has become increasingly top of mind over the years. It's been interesting to see, starting 20 years ago, as I was looking into what security meant. How that's something that has morphed and changed and sometimes wintered. I use the term wintering in that if you have an emerging technology, sometimes it takes the world by storm and stays. Sometimes it shows up and then kind of goes away out of the public consciousness and then back again, kind of in a cycle. Security's always been important over the last 20 years, don't get me wrong, but it certainly has had more emphasis the last few years than I've seen in a long time. And so I think the skills along those lines, things like analytics, monitoring, the protection against various attacks, ransomware, things like that. So the cloud security. The other thing that I find interesting are various ways in which emerging technologies are being applied into everyday activities. Emerging technologies are always those things that are 3 to 5 years away, right, Phil? But what we're finding is because of the cloud, things aren't 3 to 5 years away anymore. They can be adopted much more quickly than that. And they're ready as long as a company has the stomach for it, the will for it.
Yes, indeed. Okay. So we're going to move into the core of the interview. So, James, can you maybe give us a career tip, one that the audience may not be aware of and perhaps should be?
One of the first things I would say that people tend to overlook when it comes to anything, if they're going into security or into the cloud or what have you, things that I call power skills. That's the term I use for soft skills or what have you. I think one of the first things, the thing that I hear about, besides having a good, solid technical foundation, is somebody who has the ability to do good interpersonal skills. And it's easy to talk about those things in the abstract. But I remember years ago talking to a person. We had a set of meetings. It was for IBM, and I was helping them set up an e-business college to move green screeners over to the modern world, which then wasn't cloud yet. It was more client server. These were people that were used to working with mainframes. Long story short, I worked with a collection of fantastic people there. And one of them was a brilliant cybersecurity, a security person, but he could never show up on time. And it wasn't at the meetings half the time. And I get the idea that if you're in demand, it's kind of hard to show up sometimes and you have to cancel things or whatever. But I remember a person pulling me aside and saying, James, you can be the most brilliant person in the world, but if you don't know how to manage your time, you're not as useful as you think you are. And that's a lesson I learned a long time ago. So I would say things like that.
Indeed. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think those sort of, although you may be good and gifted at what you do, you're inevitably part of a delivery function or a team of people who are working on the same thing, and you can't be part of that. Then that obviously reduces the value, as you say, of what you can do.
One of the other things I noticed is that as governance, for example, governance is the idea in security specifically that, look, here's what I've said I was going to do. Here's the standard, whatever standard that is. Let's say GDPR, okay, or the NIST cybersecurity framework. Pick a standard, ISO 27000 standards, whatever one you can think of. There's PCI. If you take a credit card as a company, as an organization, there are certain standards you have to follow. Governance is simply, I'll boil it down a bit, probably too much. you say you're going to follow X standard. So then you go about doing your business, whatever you do, your activities, and then you turn around and go, did we actually follow that standard that we said we'd follow 6 months ago, or a quarter ago, or 2 weeks ago? And then you document it. It's that kind of process. The reason I bring that up is we need people, whether they're IT professionals or security professionals, to understand what it means to adhere to a standard and document it. That to me is very related to those kinds of soft skills. I was talking to a former policeman in the UK, and he is now in the governance side of things. And he said he feels it's a less technical role than it is more of a role where you listen to what people say they're doing, and then you actually focus on what they're really doing. And he said, my experience as a Bobby was very useful for that. But so he made an interesting transition there. And to me, that's just another example of people using their power skills, as it were, in the IT space.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yes. Okay, James, can you share with us your worst career moment and what you learned from that experience?
Worst career moment might have been a friend of mine always says that I am a retread. A retread meaning back in the old days, if a tire got old, you could actually put a new set of treads back on the tire. I got my degree, third degree in English literature. Can you believe that? My worst career moment might have been realizing that I had been teacher of the year, and I'd been on a dissertation fellowship. And I realized I was in a career that was going to pay me hundreds of dollars a year. And I hate to sound so mercenary, but it was a career. Let's put it this way. I remember looking at the application, and again, I wasn't much of a slouch. I did pretty well, but I realized I was one. The letter came back and said, "Congratulations, you've applied, etc. You are one of like 1,327 applicants." And I realized, I didn't get a degree at Harvard or Cambridge or whatever. And my worst career moment, when actually I turned into my best career moment, is I sat down and said, it's time for me to change what I'm doing. And I got back into computers, where I should have stayed. And I remember in a month, I made more working as a consultant in computers than I did with my entire dissertation fellowship. So that worst moment was like, I've spent years preparing for something, and it's just not going to work out for whatever reason. There are a couple other reasons why I didn't think it was going to work out. And I turned it into I took stock, and I kind of evaluated, and I said, I need a new set of objectives for life, as it were. And so that's when I started learning about IT.
Sure. So do you keep an eye out in terms of understanding where you are and what you're doing, and be able to evaluate where you are? And if you do need to do something different, is that something you consciously consider?
Very much so. For example, I did a whole lot early on. I learned a lot about security. And then I found that for whatever reason, the career opportunities I had were less at that time in cybersecurity and more in web development and design. And so I basically said, well, it's time to pivot there. So I try to listen very carefully to what inputs I'm getting, whether it be from bosses or from the marketplace or what's happened. And then I try to pivot credibly towards what I think is a good opportunity.
Right.
To me. And some of the things I look for, not only, from a news perspective, like whatever the trends are, because if you focus too much on that, you just become one of those people that kind of puts a finger in the air, and then suddenly you think you're an expert in something, or you try to pass yourself off as that. I think it's more than that. It comes down to listening carefully to your network of friends, your network of people that you work with and work for.
Yeah, that's very good. And maybe something a little bit more positive. Can you tell us about your career highlight?
The career highlight, one of the things that I found was I had done a talk. I do a lot of speaking, public speaking these days in the online world, right? But I remember a few years ago, I gave a talk. It was in the UK about help desk and some of the essential skills there. And the following year, what it was is somebody came back and said, you probably won't remember me, but we had a bit of a chat. I talked to a lot of people, and I kind of remembered who this person was, who he was. And I said, well, what have you been up to lately? And he said, well, what I did is I took some of your advice, James, as you were talking about listening to learn more about Linux and open source and apply that to my job. He said, and I was able to get a very nice, hefty pay raise. That's just an example of highlights. Every once in a while, quite often, actually, fairly often, I'm able to see a student. There's another student who was maybe a C average, more like a D average student, or in a high school here in the United States. Another example. And over the years, I've seen this person become not only a fine web developer, but now a person who owns his own business, doing security now for people. So it's cybersecurity. It's really interesting to me to see on a scalable level how it's possible to influence the lives of many, many people. And I've actually seen that evidence, not only from an anecdotal perspective, those two people, but hundreds, if not thousands of people. And years ago, I got into teaching because I've been helped by so many instructors throughout my life, whether it be, I remember some elementary school teachers, some high school, college. And I said, I can influence for the good, for the better, so many people. And then I realized if I got into certification and education for an organization like CompTIA, instead of affecting hundreds of students a year, like I could as a professor, because I got job offers to work as a professor, both in English and in IT and things like that. But the idea of getting into certification and an organization like CompTIA was so cool because I could affect thousands of people if I do my job right. Whether or not I do it right is another question. But that, to me, when I see evidence of affecting the workforce and helping people improve their lives, that's why you get up in the morning.
Yeah. Do you find you have students who come back as well? They may have done cybersecurity, for example, to start with. Do they then return and do something different or something new?
At CompTIA, we have a whole cybersecurity pathway that we set up, which I would argue cybersecurity pathway begins with, understanding the foundations. Too many times I will talk to CEOs, CIOs, mostly CIOs and hiring managers, and I ask them what is it a foundational, what is it how should I say, a consistent thing that you'd like to fix, or an issue that you'd like to fix in workers. And to a person, they'll say, James, a lot of folks that I know, they can be very savvy in certain areas, but they don't have a lot of the technical foundations to improve, and make those pivots like I talked about earlier. Reason I bring that up is that too often I think people don't have those kind of foundations, and so it's really cool to work with people so that they end up getting those kind of foundations. So I'd say that.
Good. All right. So James, can you tell us what excites you about the future of careers in IT and tech?
One of the things that's so exciting about it is it changes all the time. And in changing all the time, as long as you have your foundations, you can keep your wits about you. But one of the most exciting things that's happened is to see how for the good, technology can affect people's lives. And it's been neat, for example, that in this horrible thing that's happened with COVID and various things, how technology, when it's used right, can be there to help us out, as long as we use our tools correctly and don't use them for ill. It's been really interesting to see on the positive side how that works, and the idea of how emerging technology, I always call it emergent technology because it's here right now, how that can be used is something that's really exciting.
Yes, I mean, you obviously touched on the pandemic, and I've asked a couple of other guests this question, but do you see there's now going to be maybe a pivot in the way technology progresses over the next decade or so as a consequence of what we've been through over the last sort of 15 to 18 months?
Very much so. I think one of the first things, besides like the negative side, like some supply chain issues, not only supply chain attacks, but also certain processors, video cards, et cetera, are nowadays unobtainium. So it'll be interesting to see how
Yep.
how the industry will go. Okay, we see how there are bottlenecks in the process. How can we fix that? And process is interesting to me in that. Usually whatever industry it is will figure out on its own whatever equilibrium is and how things work properly, how an ecosystem works. It'll be interesting to see how technology companies fix that particular thing. The other thing that's been to me fascinating is I've worked remotely in one way or the other for over 20 years. So it's interesting. So as the world has now been, thrust remotely over the last year, I think that one of the big changes that you'll see is how people will figure out how to not just do online as a backup to, well, we'd rather go back to in person all the time. And that there's a lot of that type of thinking, but I think it'd be interesting to see how people blend the use of technology and really understand its power by blending it with traditional meat space. I call it meat space communication and with online. That's going to be a really interesting nexus.
Yeah, I think you're right. It will be. We'll have to watch this space and see what happens. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go into the reveal round now. We're going to find out a little bit more about you and the way you think. You ready for this?
Possibly. I'm not sure I want to know. No, just kidding. Yeah, I'm ready.
So what first attracted you to a career in IT?
What attracted me in a career in IT was what I noticed is that people found that the tail was wagging the dog, as it were. So many people, they found that technology was using them rather than them using technology. And I love teaching folks, and I love basically making it possible to have technology do really cool and interesting things for you. The other thing, I love troubleshooting. When there are problems, I love to get in there and kind of hunker down and see what's going on and get into some root causes and things like that. So helping people is the first thing. And the second thing is I love trying to figure out how all that technology works to get it underneath the hood, as it were.
Yeah. And what is the best career advice you've ever received?
The best career advice I ever received was from a friend of mine who's been in technology far longer than I have. And he said, James, always be curious. In sales side of the world, it's ABC, always be closing, right? I think in the tech side of the world or teaching side of the world or what have you, I think it's always be curious. That sense of innate curiosity. And even if you're tired or whatever at work or you're dealing with challenges, if you have that innate sense of trying to figure out how something works, I think you'll always get into the meat of a situation and be able to figure it all out.
Yes. And what is the worst career advice you've ever received?
Follow the money, that sort of thing. I think, I should say that the worst career advice I ever had was where people will say, I've had people go, well, it doesn't really matter so much about the interpersonal side of things. Don't worry about not so much what other people think, but don't worry about how it's going to affect other people. Just, move forward and learn, and things will, come your way. I think that's an awfully mercenary way to go about.
Yeah.
To go about your career. I think it's very important to be independent and to have a vision and to move forward kind of no matter what. I get that. But I think that it's very important to realize your place in the world and other people's place in the world. That's kind of why we're here. You're here to figure out how to work with people.
If you were to begin your career again in today's world, what would you do?
First thing I would do is I probably would have done a little bit harder work in learning some of the foundations of IT, of tech and how that works. It took me a long time to realize that if you have that strong foundation of technical knowledge, then you can basically move in whatever world you want, the development world, the infrastructure world, the data world, the security world, whichever. So I would have spent more time learning not only informally, like I do pretty well, but formally, and really getting basically a proof and evidence of a career pathway, so that instead of telling people about it with lots of words, people just can kind of see that evidence of progress.
Yeah. And what career objectives are you currently focusing on?
The career objectives lately have to do with, I need to get a little bit, I think, deeper into understanding some security elements and things like that. A little bit more about analytics. I mean, I'm pretty good at that stuff, but I'd really like to get deeper in there. The other thing, I'd like to learn a bit more about project management, how that works, the whole agile side of things. Already fairly knowledgeable in that, but I'd like to get deeper into that. And then finally, I've been thinking lately, maybe some additional education about to be an educator and how that works. I mean, I people come to me for train the trainers, or come to CompTIA and all that. But I think I need to basically get more knowledgeable in how people learn from various parts of the world and various ways in which, all the human beings are so different. How do they really learn, and what are some of those things? More than just understanding. Well, some people are kinesthetic learners and some people are, visual learners or whatever. Getting deeper than that.
Yes, absolutely. So it doesn't really matter where you are within your career, does it, or what you do? There's going to always be something else and something new that you can learn. So, yeah. And what's the number one non-technical skill that has helped you in your career so far?
The number one non-technical skill I would say that's helped me so far is some form of empathy. I like to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
I like to connect with them, not only just to make them, put them at ease. I mean, people will say, "Oh, James, you put people at ease real well," or whatever. Or I can be, I think, very disarming and very friendly and all that. But I think that it really comes down to figuring out where people are, what they need, and how I can help them the most. So.
And what do you do to keep your own career energized?
What I do is I will get deep into a particular topic. For years ago, we were in a very Windows world, very Windows-centric world. And what I did is, and I learned quite a bit about how Microsoft did things, and that was great. But what I then did is I found out about the Linux operating system, and I got really deep into that. And the reason I say that is the next time I booted up a Windows system one time, after spending a lot of time learning Linux, I realized, oh, that's what that particular Windows system is doing. It's just kind of hiding some of the steps. It has much the same thing. So what helped me a lot was getting deeper into one area that seemed like it was unrelated or seemed the opposite, but in fact helps you. So that sort of thing, and you can do that even with unrelated things. For some reason or other, probably due to COVID, I've gotten a whole lot into automobiles. I have a couple of very old cars. One's as old as I am. It's a Ford Mustang. The other one is 10 years younger than that. It's a 1975 Land Cruiser, Toyota Land Cruiser. I'm working on the clutch right now, and I'm working on. I've been working on all sorts of things having to do with the body of the car, but mostly in getting into that, it's basically helped me to actually understand how technology works from a troubleshooting period,
right?
From a troubleshooting perspective. That's helped a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely. It sort of leads into the next question as well. So what do you do in your spare time away from technology?
In my spare time, three things that I do. At least I used to do a lot more than I do now. First one, a lot of scuba diving. I love water, always have. So the second thing, a lot of kayaking. And if there's anything water related, back in the day, I used to do a lot of, my friends and I used to go find bridges that were over rivers and creeks and things like that. And we had various adventures and, cliff jumping and diving and things like that, but a lot of scuba diving and things like that. And the last hobby that I seem to have picked up, I'm not sure it's a hobby. It's more of a sickness or an obsession, really, but working on these cars of mine. It's been a lot of fun, fixing clutches and let's see, the next thing I've got the electrical system to do some pounding on. So it's been a lot of fun to do that. But all of these things, and somehow I think are a lot of fun. I love being outdoors, and so my cars take me outdoors. And for longer than 10 years, probably a good 20 years, one of these cars I've really neglected. I just use it too much to have fun, and I've never properly fixed it up. And I'm paying the price for that, but I'm also learning a lot, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. Okay. James, can you share a parting piece of advice with us?
When it comes to your career, I think in addition to curiosity, I think one of the things is get a really good network of people to help you out. I'm a real big fan of the idea of not only peer-based learning, but working, kind of living with a group of friends, a group of people who you can, if not rely on, you can certainly work with. Often I will talk to people who have devoted fantastic, really cool amounts of time in learning a particular topic, whatever that topic is. endpoints with A+, for example, or networking and security. But oftentimes they've neglected their network of professionals. So get a good, solid network going. Doesn't matter if you use LinkedIn or whatever social networking tool you want to use, but also do as much in person as you can, et cetera. But get that network of people together, because that's where the career opportunities usually come from. And it's also where your learning opportunities can come from, because you can kind of see where people are going and say, okay, I want some of that, or it inspires you. So I would focus on a network of peers.
Yes, that's a good idea. Good recommendation, definitely. So, James, where can we find out more about you and connect with you?
A couple of different ways. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. James Stanger. What is that? Just Google me. Or on LinkedIn, James Stanger, JamesStanger. I also have a Twitter account. The same thing, James Stanger. The other thing is there's a CompTIA blog that you can check out. And I, every once in a while, actually more than every once in a while, I add entries about various technical topics and things like that.
Great.
So there are 3 ways that you can feel free to get a hold of me. And it's always fun to chat with folks about their career choices and things like that.
James, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks so much, Phil. Have a great one.
Hi, Phil here again. Now, if you thought about being a guest on the show yourself, or you have somebody in mind that might be a good guest, please do let me know. You can reach me on Twitter, where I'm at PhilTechCareer, or you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can even contact me through the website, which is itcareerenergizer.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.